Welcome. My name is Peter Strong. I provide online mindfulness therapy via Skype for the treatment of anxiety and depression and other emotional issues that respond well to mindfulness therapy. One of the questions I'm often asked is, what is the best therapy for panic attacks and severe anxiety in general? And I recommend mindfulness therapy. It's, in my opinion, the best approach available. The reason why mindfulness therapy is so effective for working with anxiety and panic attacks is because it helps you change the underlying habitual process that causes your anxiety. So medications are not effective, in my opinion, because they do not address that underlying cause, the psychological habits that create anxiety. Conventional talk therapy is often not that effective either, for the same reason. It doesn't really get to the underlying mechanism that's causing your anxiety. Mindfulness therapy does. It's a way of changing the underlying habit that causes your anxiety. And anxiety and panic attacks are habits. And all habits can be changed. So, how does mindfulness therapy work for changing anxiety and healing anxiety? Well, the first thing that we must do is change the way that we relate to our emotions. So most people develop a great deal of fear around their anxiety and panic attacks. So the fear reaction is understandable. When you have no other choices, that's going to dominate. But unfortunately, the reaction of fear will simply reinforce the anxiety. So the first thing we must do is develop a different relationship with our emotions that's not fear-based. We need to overcome that habitual fear reaction itself. And we do this by learning how to meditate on our anxiety using mindfulness. So this means that we might look at a situation and replay it in the mind in order to get access to the anxiety, but so that we can then work with it and train with it using mindfulness. So the object here is to be able to sit with your anxiety without becoming overwhelmed by it, without becoming overwhelmed by the fear reactions to the anxiety. And this is quite easy to do. You just have to know what you're doing. You need some guidance and you need some practice. But most people can achieve this first goal in a matter of a few weeks at the most. You just have to know what you're doing and you need the guidance. So the first step then is to be able to relate to the anxiety without reacting to it. The second step is to see that anxiety as being an object in the mind and not identifying with it, because that's in many ways the main problem, besides those reactions of fear to the anxiety. The second main problem is the reaction of identification with the anxiety or the fear. When we identify with it, we basically lose power and it becomes overwhelming. So we need to see the anxiety the same way that we would look at an object. And even better, to see the anxiety as being like a child or a visitor that gets triggered and comes to us for help. That's a very good strategy. So see the anxiety as being like a child. It can't heal its own suffering. It has to go to its parents to get the help that it needs to heal. It's very much the same with our emotions. They are helpless in themselves. They're just the product of habit. In order to change, we have to develop a conscious relationship with them, just the same as between a parent and a child. We have to see them as a child or as an object in the mind. And then we can be of help because we don't just become overwhelmed through identification or fear. So learning to see the emotion as an object or a child is very important. So this is developing the relationship of compassion with your own emotions. Absolutely essential for healing anxiety and panic attacks. Another way that we work with our emotions during our meditation on the anxiety is to work with its imagery. Now, this may not be familiar to you, but rest assured, after working on this for over 10 years now, I can absolutely stand by this, that all emotions are based on imagery. So how you see the anxiety in the mind is what really causes the anxiety. It's the imagery. And typically, the imagery is too big and too close. That's why it is experienced as being overwhelming. It has to be very large to be overwhelming. But again, the imagery of emotions is also habit-based. There's no particular reason why it has to stay that way. It's just habit. Well, habits can be changed through mindfulness, through bringing conscious awareness to explore that imagery and then change the imagery. When you change the imagery of an emotion, you change the emotion. And this is actually a natural process by which emotions operate in the mind, and when they heal, they almost always become smaller in size and more distant. This is part of the healing process that happens naturally. In mindfulness meditation work, we're simply utilizing this natural process of image change, and we're speeding it up because we can bring in consciousness. So working with the imagery of anxiety is very important. So in this way, we can begin to train the emotions to heal so that we don't become a victim of our anxiety attacks. Then we go to the final stage of our work, which is engaging with the triggers. Whatever triggers the panic attacks, whether it's driving a car or being in a public place or whatever it might be, we need to train for those very specific situations, and then we do the challenge, and then we might process any anxiety that comes up after the challenge. So we take a very strategic, highly focused approach to managing the challenges in their real life situations. But if you train for it, then you'll get very quick results. If you don't train for it, then you risk simply being re-traumatized. So This we call Mindfulness-based Exposure Therapy, and is by far the best approach, in my opinion, for overcoming anxiety and panic attacks, and also other forms of emotional suffering too. The process is much the same. It all starts with changing the relationship to your emotions, then exploring the reactive thoughts that feed the emotions and changing those, and then looking at the imagery of the emotion and changing that, and then applying this in a exposure challenge format. If you'd like to learn more about mindfulness therapy for overcoming anxiety and panic attacks, do please contact me and let's schedule a Skype therapy session. You will see changes even after the first session, and most people see significant improvements after 3 or 4 sessions with me. So please contact me if you would like help with panic attacks. Thank you.